The plains of western Nebraska, wind-scarred and bone-cold in the heart of February. Don't forgive easily. Out here, under the weight of open skies and frozen silence, things can vanish. Livestock, cars, people, even guilt, if you bury it deep enough. But on the night of February 2nd, 2000, something tore through that stillness like a phantom on fire, and the small-town calm that Lincoln County had grown used to would never fully return. Deputy Stan McKnight, a man built for small-town law, was rolling slow down a back road when it happened. Routine patrol. Same stretches he'd driven 100 times. Boots up, radio humming softly. Window down just a crack to breathe in frost. That's when the headlights came. A set of burning eyes in the dark. Tearing up behind him. Closing fast. It was a maroon pickup truck, running too hot for the ice-laced road. Texas plates barely readable through the grime and blur. It passed him like a ghost on amphetamines, skating over black ice like the driver was courting death. McKnight, methodical by nature, flipped the cruiser around and began pursuit, slow and steady at first, his instincts flaring like coals. He radioed it in, voice calm but firm. They had chatter, strange vehicles, unknown faces, and now maybe they had a lead. But whoever was behind, that wasn't your average reckless kid. This driver knew the land. He took a left off into a side route, slippery as a snake trail, and disappeared into the dark like he'd melted into it. The deputy cut the chase. Not out of fear, out of reason. Roads were slick with invisible death. No streetlights, no tire grip, and no civilians in harm's way. But something about that truck gnawed at him. A hunch, low and steady in his gut. This wasn't over. And it wasn't. A week later, February 9th, a farmer just outside North Platte placed a quiet call to authorities. He hadn't been inside his old barn for years. Just let it rot into the landscape like so many others. But something was different. The smell, the mess, the chemical tang clinging to the dirt. Deputies rolled out to investigate, and what they found wasn't just odd, it was volatile. Inside the barn, surrounded by empty feed sacks and rusted tools, was a makeshift methamphetamine lab. Primitive but effective. A scattering of cold chemistry and hydrous ammonia, ephedrine, stripped lithium batteries. The usual hallmarks of rural destruction. But it wasn't just the lab that mattered. It was what they found near the workbench. Mail addressed to a name that would soon send tremors through 2 states. Charles Moses Jr., Nocona, Texas. Now, Moses wasn't new to the radar. Not entirely. Texas authorities already had him pegged for weapons theft. A string of burglaries, and mean streak that ran deeper than most. But this? Meth? Gunplay? Barn labs on foreign soil? This was something else. They checked vehicle records. Cross-reference plates. The maroon pickup from a week before. Texas tags. Matched his ride. Suddenly, Deputy McKnight's icy hunch wasn't just validated. It was red hot. What came next was a slow unraveling. The kind the FBI knows well. Locals talk. Faces get remembered. Strangers don't go unnoticed in these parts. Residents began reporting that someone matching Moses's mug had been seen around, jittery, armed, and twitching like a spring-loaded trap. But then quiet. He was gone. Again. For a week. It was as if Charles Moses had evaporated into corn stubble and dead leaves. But on the night of February 12th, fate blinked. Deputy Casey Nelms was working his night shift. Just past 11 p.m., coffee in hand. Heading out like always. That's when he saw it. The truck. Same Texas plates. Same maroon shell. Parked just off a gas station lot. Half-lit, idling quiet. Like it belonged. But it didn't. Nelms approached calm. Professional. The kind of calm born from years on the job. He asked for ID. The man in the truck handed it over with a grin. That didn't reach his eyes. Name on the card? Charles Moses. And just like that, the spark was lit. Nelms reached to make the arrest, hand going for the door. That's when Moses moved, quick, violent, and all teeth. The 2 men struggled, metal flashing, the night erupting into chaos. A shot rang out, then more. Moses vanished into the dark again. But the damage was done. Shots fired. Officer down. Moses hadn't just run. He'd opened fire, nearly killed a deputy in cold blood. The manhunt was no longer about narcotics. This was now an attack on law enforcement, and the FBI was coming in. As the shot deputy was stabilized and adrenaline gave way to grim clarity, it became evident Charles Moses hadn't just fled justice, he declared war on it. By dawn, law enforcement across Nebraska had one face on every bulletin board: a gaunt, volatile man with Texas roots and meth in his veins, now wanted for the attempted execution of a peace officer. That kind of charge doesn't sit quietly in case files. It rattles the foundation of every cruiser and badge in the state. If a man like Moses would shoot a cop at point-blank range, then he wouldn't hesitate for anything. And so, the net began to tighten. Sheriff's departments from neighboring counties, state patrol divisions, local deputies. All hands were called in, but with a suspect as unpredictable as Moses, conventional methods would fall short. This man didn't run on fear. He ran on meth rage and survival instinct. So the FBI stepped in. Special Agent Ron Raywalt, out of the North Platte Resident Agency, received the call. His office typically dealt with fraud, forgery, and quiet crimes committed in quiet towns. But this wasn't that. This was a storm on the horizon, one that required federal reach and federal teeth. Within hours, Agent Raywalt filed for a UFAP warrant, unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. That warrant gave the Bureau national authority to chase Moses wherever he went, across county lines, across state borders, across darkness. It was official. The hunt was on. Meanwhile, 40 miles from the last known sighting, a farmer tending his fields noticed something strange near an abandoned barn. A trail of scorched rubber in the frozen dirt. A smear of blood across the driver's side door of a pickup that didn't belong. The vehicle? That same maroon truck. The back window had been shattered, likely by incoming rounds. Blood on the seat told him Moses hadn't escaped unscathed. Maybe a round from Nelms had hit its mark after all. But if Moses was injured, he wasn't slowing down. Inside the cab, agents recovered more than blood. They found a makeshift chemistry set for meth production. Stripped cold medicine packets, camp stove burners, jars of acid, survival gear, spare plates, police scanners, even camouflage netting. This wasn't just a fugitive. This was a man prepared for a siege. And he wasn't running blind. He was playing chess 2, 3 moves ahead. But the Bureau played deeper. From that moment, the FBI began coordinating a statewide dragnet. Not just boots on the ground, but aerial surveillance, cell tower triangulation, and psychological profiling. They began cross-referencing every known associate of Moses in Texas, running license plate scans on nearby roads, and tracing credit card usage, which remained eerily absent. Moses wasn't using plastic. He was bartering, stealing, staying feral. That same evening, another chilling twist. A state trooper, stationed near Paxton, Nebraska, responded to a call from a rural resident. Someone had spotted a suspicious vehicle parked near a long-abandoned farmhouse. The trooper didn't return. What followed was a series of panic radio calls, gunfire, then silence. When backup arrived, they found him down, shot in the chest, his bulletproof vest torn through like paper. Moses had used a 7.62 millimeters Soviet SKS rifle, military grade, armor-piercing, a weapon made for war. And now it was in the hands of a drug-fueled fugitive, spiraling out into the prairie. 2 officers, 2 bullets, and 1 ghost in the wilderness. That night, the FBI and State Patrol converged on the region like a wave. Dozens of cruisers, night vision-equipped aircraft, sworn men with scopes trained on every tree line. But Moses, somehow, impossibly, was gone again. He moved like smoke, uncatchable, and now lethal. Special Agent Raywalt knew the profile well. A meth addict, suffering from extreme sleep deprivation, paranoid, and now desperate. That combination could not be reasoned with. It had to be contained. But what no one could yet predict was that the next body wouldn't wear a badge. It would wear overalls. By the time the sun rose on February 14th, 2000, the hunt had already gone beyond man and badge. Now it was something primal. A wounded predator, desperate, unpredictable and cornered, was tearing across Nebraska's empty sprawl with one thought burning behind his eyes: survive, at any cost. The FBI's presence was no longer quiet. Roads were watched. Air patrols looped like hawks overhead. Field agents were working in tandem with local sheriffs and state troopers, mapping out every farmhouse, every dirt trail, every shadow wide enough for a man to crawl into. Special Agent Ron Raywalt, coordinating from the FBI's Mobile Command Center, knew what they were up against. Moses wasn't just a drug runner anymore. He was a cop shooter, a walking powder keg with high-powered rifles and blood on his hands. The timeline was tightening, and so was the perimeter. But Moses, even wounded, stayed slippery. That morning, a call came in from the tiny farming town of Dickens, where a rancher had discovered something that didn't belong. His barn door, open. His parents' sedan, gone. In its place, the maroon Texas pickup. The one lawman had been chasing for 2 weeks. Deputies arrived fast. No hesitation. The truck was quiet, abandoned, but inside, a war zone. Chemical residue from a meth lab. Scattered tools. A rifle shell or two still warm to the touch. Blood smeared across the seat, dark and dried. Moses had been here. No doubt. And judging by the trail, he hadn't left alone. He'd taken the farmer's car. Swapped wheels like a vulture changing feathers. It was official. Auto theft, home invasion, multiple assaults on officers. And yet, it was about to get worse. Much worse. Just 2 hours later, 60 miles northwest, another call. This one didn't come from a frightened rancher or a deputy's radio. It came from a family. A father hadn't come home. His last call had dropped mid-sentence while checking in from an old, disused farmstead. The family traced a signal and sent help. What they found was a scene no one would forget. He was face down in the frozen dirt. His boots lay a few feet off. The side window of his truck had been blown out. Glass fanned across the ground like ice shards from a winter nightmare. The man, a local farmer, a good one, known and liked by all, had been shot at close range. No struggle. No fight. Just ambushed. Authorities worked the scene with clinical precision. FBI ballistics experts examined the angle of the bullet, the trajectory through the window, the location of the shell casings. The math didn't lie. This wasn't a shootout. It was a cold-blooded killing. What for? A vehicle. Moses had killed a man just to keep moving. With that, the charges escalated again. The Bureau upgraded the UFAP warrant. A new federal charge was added. Carjacking resulting in homicide. A capital offense. Now the story was different. This wasn't just an unstable criminal running scared. This was a man making deliberate, brutal choices to stay ahead, no matter who got in his way. But the FBI wasn't just reacting. They were tracking. Agent Raywalt's team began combing through cell tower pings from phones in the area. The farmer's cell phone, the one that had gone silent, still had life. Brief flickers. One ping, then darkness. Another ping miles away. It was a signal bouncing off rural towers in western Nebraska, and it was moving. Moses hadn't dumped the phone. He was using it. That single detail gave the Bureau what they needed. A breadcrumb trail. And now they followed. By dusk, another report. A ranch wife in Scottsbluff County had experienced something strange. A break-in. Someone had entered the house while she was home, walked through it with muddy boots, rummaged through drawers, opened doors. She'd hidden, and whoever had come in hadn't stayed long. Deputies arrived and confirmed what she already feared. This wasn't just a burglar. This was him. And once again, the FBI found glass, left shattered in the driveway, near a tire track, the kind of clue that only meant one thing. Moses was moving fast, still in the stolen truck, still high, still armed, and heading west, straight toward the Wyoming border. By the morning of February 15th, the entire western edge of Nebraska had turned into a live wire. The roads were empty, not because people had nowhere to go, but because they were afraid of who they might pass on the way. News was spreading faster than the cold. A killer was drifting across the plains like a rattlesnake in the grass. Impossible to track, impossible to trust. And with the Wyoming state line only miles away, law enforcement knew one thing. If Charles Moses crossed that border, the manhunt would fracture. So the FBI made its move. At the Lusk Police Department, just over the state line, Police Chief Gary Gill got the call. It wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. You got a fugitive headed your way. Armed, trained, willing to kill again. The description didn't do justice to the chaos this man had already left behind. 2 officers gunned down, a farmer executed for his truck, a woman nearly caught in her own home. And now, he was slipping into Wyoming territory, running on fumes and methamphetamine. The Bureau coordinated with Niobrara County deputies, setting up a 10-mile containment zone, a sweep that wrapped around every ranch road, service track, and cattle trail. Officers patrolled with guns drawn, radios open and eyes burning. But still, no Moses. He was like a vapor in the wind. And then, a break. At a truck stop near Lusk, a long-haul driver phoned it in. He'd seen a blue pickup truck, parked quietly in the far lot, no plates, but the body and color matched the bolo exactly. Someone was asleep inside. The man looked familiar, real familiar. Chief Gill and Assistant Chief Dusty Chrisman rolled out within minutes. No sirens, no lights, just steel nerves and slow hands. The truck was there, quiet, unmoving. The driver's side window, blown out, just like the vehicle Moses had taken from the murdered farmer. They approached from opposite ends, flanking the vehicle with weapons holstered but ready. Inside, a man slumped, eyes closed, possibly armed, possibly dead. Chrisman raised a hand, waited, watched, and then the man stirred. His head turned, his eyes opened. It was Charles Moses. For a single, electric second, they had him. But Chrisman didn't shoot. He didn't have a clean angle. The backdrop was too crowded, the stakes too high. And Moses, ever the serpent, seized the moment. The truck roared to life. Tires shrieked. And just like that, he was gone. The chase thundered through Lusk's narrow main street, an old western town now echoing with the sound of a fugitive's engine and the pulse of every patrol car behind him. Moses didn't slow for stop signs or pedestrians. He wasn't running from justice anymore. He was trying to outrun fate. But the road has limits, and so does luck. North of town, he veered off the highway and onto a rutted ranch road, where even seasoned patrol vehicles began to fall behind. Through cattle fences, across low dams, over terrain meant for hooves, not wheels. And just like that, he vanished again. But this time, the FBI wouldn't play catch-up. They'd cornered him too many times. And each time he'd slithered through. Not again. Special Agent Ron Raywalt, now embedded with Wyoming authorities, called in the Bureau's next card, airborne surveillance. They deployed 2 aircraft, equipped with long-range optics and GPS mapping. The skies over eastern Wyoming weren't just clouds anymore. They were searchlights. And as the planes combed the 10-mile perimeter, one of them spotted something glinting below. A truck, blue, stuck in a ravine. No sign of a driver, but it was the same vehicle Moses had last been seen driving. The SWAT team was deployed immediately, armed to the teeth, armored in Kevlar, and briefed with every chilling detail of Moses' trail. The Nebraska State Patrol SWAT unit descended into zone by chopper. Each man was assigned a sector. Each I trained to pick up on the smallest movement. Every ravine, every treeline, every outcropping of brush. The truck was empty, but footprints, fresh ones, trailed away into the trees. Then nothing, as if Moses had once again stepped into the folds of the earth itself. They searched until dusk, and still no sign. Just one bitter truth whispered between radios and rifles. We're close, but not close enough. Night fell heavy across eastern Wyoming, and with it came silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Out there in the black folds of pine and pasture, somewhere within reach of the blood-stained truck, they found abandoned in a ravine. Charles Moses was still breathing, and everyone knew it. The only question was, where? The SWAT team pulled back, not from fear, but from caution. This wasn't terrain you entered half-blind. It was wild country, draws, gullies, thick brush where shadows tangled like wire. A single man, armed and trained, could hold off a dozen from the right position. And Moses, he had a rifle built for war. The next hours were nerve-wire tense. FBI agent, sheriff, and federal marshals briefed ranchers and residents within perimeter, advised them to lock their doors, stay vigilant, and report anything, no matter how small. But even as the warnings were handed out, Agent Ron Raywalt knew that Moses wouldn't stay in hiding for long. Not in the cold, not with methamphetamine burning through his veins. By 8:30 p.m., that prediction came true. Just east of containment zone, at a quiet homestead nestled in the hills, a dog began to bark. Not a casual bark, but a wild, frantic one. The kind animals make when they smell danger wrapped in skin. Justin Kramers, a rancher's son, stepped out with a rifle. He wasn't expecting much. Maybe a coyote, maybe a trespasser. But what he saw through the dark made every muscle in his body seize. A man standing in the yard, holding a pistol in one hand, a rifle in the other. No words at first, just presence, cold and still. Then came the voice. "I've got a gun. Don't come any closer." Justin didn't. He held position, heart hammering in his chest. The man was twitchy, unshaven, wild-eyed, and his face matched the fugitive that had been all over the news for days. There was no doubt. This was Charles Moses. Inside the house, Jim Kramers, Justin's father, had already figured out who was on their land. He made a decision, not out of recklessness, out of strategy. He approached the fugitive, slowly, without a weapon, speaking in a calm voice worn down by 100 winters. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. Instead, he offered Moses a meal. "You must be cold," he said. "Let's get you inside. Warm you up. Dry your clothes. Get some food in you." It was a gamble, the kind only a man with nothing to lose would make. But it worked. Moses hesitated. His hands flexed around the gun. His eyes darted to the shadows. But the cold had sunk deep into his bones, and the hunger clawed at his stomach like a second heartbeat. Eventually, he nodded. "All right, let's go." He laid the weapons down. Justin flanked him from behind. The tension was razor-thin. One wrong breath, and it could have all gone sideways. But Moses walked through the front door of the house like any other visitor. Inside, Jim offered him a plate, a blanket, a sense of peace. And while Moses chewed, distracted and vulnerable, Jim slipped quietly out the front door. He crossed a dark stretch of lawn to his brother's house nearby and made the call. Within minutes, federal agents and local deputies had the house surrounded. They came in silent. No sirens, no announcements, just steel-toed boots and chambered rounds. And when they entered, weapons drawn, Charles Moses did nothing. No shots, no fight. He was too tired, too hungry, too cold. The meth was wearing off. His body had burned through every ounce of desperation. He just sat there, quiet, for the first time in weeks. The arrest was clean, surgical. No one was hurt, no rounds fired. And just like that, the ghost of the plains was no longer a phantom. He was a prisoner. Charles Moses Jr., once a ghost riding the wind across the American plains, was now behind steel bars, cuffed, shackled, and watched around the clock. His capture didn't come through gunfire or helicopters or search dogs, though all had played their part. No. In the end, it was two ranchers, a father and son, who stopped the storm with patience, instinct, and a calculated gamble. And it was the FBI who made sure it stuck. At a federal detention center in Cheyenne, Wyoming, Moses was processed, photographed, and questioned. His face was hollow, sunken from exhaustion, from dehydration, from days without sleep or food. The meth had burned him from the inside out. What remained was a shell, twitching, silent, and unpredictable. But the evidence spoke louder than he ever could. Blood found in the cab of the maroon pickup matched the DNA of the wounded troopers. Ballistic tests from the FBI's Quantico labs confirmed the 7.62 millimeters rounds that tore through Kevlar vests had been fired from the same SKS military rifle discovered during his arrest. There was no mystery anymore, only proof. The agents who had worked the case, Men like Special Agent Ron Raywalt and the tactical teams from North Platte and Boston offices flew in to testify, to connect the dots, to lay out the hard truth in black and white. But perhaps the most symbolic moment came when Deputy Casey Nelms, the first officer to ever come face-to-face with Moses, flew to Cheyenne, walked into the holding facility, and formally served a warrant for the attempted murder of a lawman. A circle closed. Moses didn't fight the charges for long. Not after the Bureau presented its full file. The surveillance logs, the tire tracks, the cell tower pings, the fingerprints lifted from half-burnt equipment in barns and sheds. And not after the autopsy report from the murdered farmer was read aloud in court. Faced with the death penalty in both Nebraska and Wyoming, Moses did what all cornered men eventually do. He pleaded out. In exchange for avoiding execution, Charles Moses Jr. accepted a sentence that would guarantee he would never again see freedom. 190 years in federal prison. No parole, no appeal, no second chances. He would spend the rest of his days behind concrete and steel, far from the plains he once ran across, far from the lives he shattered. Deputy Stan McKnight, who had taken a bullet to the head, and another to the hand during that first roadside ambush, survived. But survival didn't come easy. 9 surgeries. Nearly 2 years of rehabilitation. He taught himself how to write again, how to hold a fork, how to drive. And in 23 months, almost a day, he returned to patrol, back in uniform, back in the cruiser, back on the roads where it all began. The Midwest would never forget what happened in those frozen weeks of 2000, when a man on meth turned counties into war zones and barns into battlegrounds. But it would also never forget who brought him down. It wasn't just ranchers with grit or deputies with rifles. It was federal strategy, forensic science, and the cold, methodical patience of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They never blinked. They never lost a thread. And when the rest of the world watched the killer vanish across the map, it was the FBI that saw the pattern, that wove together the chaos and pulled Moses from the shadows. For good.